Hey everybody, welcome back to the 114th episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Audacity Micro, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. How you doing, Harrison?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, AJ?
I'm doing all right. I'm kind of in a calm before the storm phase, but
Got a lot planned?
so starting tomorrow, I'm going back to teaching, and I agreed to take a second class, which is starting Tuesday. So my normal class starts up Monday. My new class starts up Tuesday. What I did not realize when they offered me this class, because they didn't specify, is my normal class is 4 to 8, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that is about an hour and 15 minutes away from my home. And the other class is at 7, and that is 2 hours away from my home. 7 a.m.
Oh. Same company? Different company?
It is all through the same university.
Okay.
One is for the Department of Corrections. That's the evening one. The morning class is for GM.
Gotcha.
So I'm all being paid by the same company, but it's in 2 different places.
When you say GM, is that like GM Motors, like the car company, or is that
General Motors?
Oh, okay. Cool.
Now, the reason I still agreed to this is because they gave me a 60% raise.
That's
They're
a big
hey,
raise.
if you do this class, we'll give you a 60% raise.
Is it on both classes or just the one?
The DOC class is basically set in stone forever because it's a long-term government contract. However, it is for the GM class and then all other classes going forwards. And they already have like 3 other classes for me booked that are more reasonable timeframes than this class.
Oh, okay.
So I will be working about 30 hours a week teaching and making like 105% of what I did as an engineer.
Sounds like your career is changing.
Yeah, that's
That
it's better than working 4 times as much and making like 80% of what I did as an engineer.
Yeah.
I've been doing with job shop work.
That sounds like there's not much time left in there to make parts.
Yeah, so basically I'm booked teaching for the next 3 months.
Okay.
Though not quite at 40 hours a week. When I have these first 2 classes and they're overlapping, my schedule is a little bit crazy because of the night and then morning thing. But that class, like basically those classes only overlap for 12 days. So like I only have to deal with that for 12 days, 3 days a week for 4 weeks. Then the schedule goes back to normal and I'm only like doing the drive once where I'll like go and then be there for 8 hours and then kind of come home. And I do that for like 2 months.
Gotcha.
But for this first 4 weeks, things are going to be a little bit crazy. They are getting me a hotel room that's kind of halfway in between, which means that I don't have to like drive an hour I don't have to drive from 8 to 9 and then from 5 to 7 the next morning. So I can do that if I so desire. I'm honestly undecided yet if I would just go home or if I would stay at the hotel, but that is an option I have. They're going to rent me a car too because it's going to be a lot of driving.
So. That'd be nice. Consistent income. That's what jobs give you, though. Consistent income. Well, that's exciting.
And the Department of Corrections class is basically like intro to all of manufacturing. The GM class is going to be specifically a metrology class, still kind of a beginner metrology class. We're not doing like CMMs or anything, but we'll do like GD&T and basically every measurement tool. But the class that I'll be teaching for GM is basically like my first week of teaching at the Department of Corrections class, just spread out over like 3 times longer. So I basically have all my materials prepared. I just need
Okay.
to go a little bit more in depth.
So do they don't provide materials, or they will, that you need to
No,
teach?
nope. It's I'm gonna
100% you.
grab micrometers and surface plates and calipers from the school and bring them down with me. And
Gotcha.
the school gave me a handful of textbooks that I could use if I wanted to, but in my experience, people are not machinists because they want to read textbooks, and they
Yep.
do better with like lecture and then hands on.
Yep.
So
Yep. Fair enough. Well, that'll be fun. Um, well, I guess that kind of slows down the what's new in your shop. Does
yep.
that mean, just out of curiosity, with you being busy and not being able to get to your shop for a little while, do you have enough money saved up, and are you going to send in your OM spindle to get rebuilt?
That is a good point. I basically, as soon as I get the check from the Houston company, the one where I went down there and did the Tormach lathe training, I could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I could. I also have, like, besides that, about 5,000 ish in MISC receivables right now. I'm just finishing up a non-Xometry job today. So
Last week, we have a local knife maker. I've mentioned him a couple of times.
yeah.
Tom Crine. He got a CM1, a new one. And last week when I was going to pick up lunch in town, his shop is right next to a really good sandwich place. It's a really good sandwich place. It's called Honey Wheat, and it's run by Mormons, and they make all the food fresh right there. So like the bread is freshly made, the cheese is fresh, the meat they cut up. It's like so good. Anyways, side topic. Anyways, while I was picking up some lunch, I swung into his shop, and he had a coolant spill on his CL1 or CM1, and
Oh,
so it was pretty funny. But I got to see it running, and that thing is quiet. But he had a whole bunch of really tiny tools. I mean, like all of his tools projections, were like inch or two out,
yeah.
like with the tool holder and everything, like the whole stack up, like the bottom of the tool, just really short, really tiny tools. But it was just kind of cool to see it
Yeah.
running, and I really like what I saw. I don't really do stuff that's small enough to need a CM one, but like I would want to have one just because it's just pretty cool.
Yeah, they're neat little machines.
So just way overkill for just a cool machine to have in the corner to use every once in a while.
Yeah. You don't need you don't need the 30K spindle that can only take a little wimpy depth of cut.
Yeah. That being said, I would get a lot of use out of a Datron, and I'd still like to get one of those at some point.
Yeah, that would make sense. And
And
those
I
you can
could,
just like shove in a closet.
yeah, those you could stick somewhere small. A Neo would be perfect for what I need, but I would love to find an excuse to get like an M8 Cube,
Mm-hmm.
just for the simple fact that, well, for two reasons. One, they have that drop front that can do drill and tapping around the perimeter, which I know I could do technically in my UMC or in my VF, but they're kind of hacks and
Yeah.
they're not really well supported, where that would be better. And two, you can get a 5-axis attachment for the M8, which would give me another 5-axis
Mm-hmm.
to use for different projects. So I would love to find a way to justify that machine, but it would probably end up being a Neo if I were ever to get one of those two machines.
Yeah. I don't know. I could see you having a customer like in your area with all the big food processing stuff. I can see you having a customer that's like, hey, we need a bunch of these 24 by 48 inch plates.
Yeah,
And those are, M8 lunch all day.
yeah. And so there's a lot of plate work that we do that I've done that I just hate doing on any of my machines because I don't really have the right setup for it. So, but me and Weston have kind of talked, and I think we're kind of going in the direction of like medium to small parts. I don't
Okay.
I don't really want to do large work. Like,
No, I understand that completely.
yeah, but my definition of large parts is a lot different than your definition of large
That's
parts, probably.
I mean, we've all seen the shops though that take the shafts that are 2 feet in diameter and
Mm-hmm.
96 inches long.
And it's not that I wouldn't do that work someday, but I'm not going to take that work in this building. It's just the machines that make sense in that space. You have to limit the size of the part you're going to do to make that space functional.
Yeah.
And so I'd have to be in a much larger building to be able to handle the equipment to do much larger parts. And I'd much
Yeah.
rather focus on the medium to small parts in our current building and have more machines that can do it and get an efficiency for the space rather than going into the larger stuff.
Yeah. Small parts are way more capital friendly. Like your material smaller. Yeah, your parts are smaller, your work holding smaller, your machines are smaller. That your Because your material is smaller, you can fit a lot more values worth on a small shelf. That
Mm-hmm.
just leads to a smaller shop, which leads to smaller, air conditioning and heat loadings, which leads to all kinds of money savings all over the board.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say like I think the size that we kind of are looking at is like 6 inches wide by 18 inches long by 2 to 3 inches thick. Like if it can fit in that size, that's a good size for how we're set up. And we can obviously fudge those numbers on any of those dimensions, but that gets into stuff that's if you go outside those sizes, it becomes stuff that we can do, but we're not set up to do as efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but yeah, other than that, just been humming along. It's weird because we're kind of slow right now, and slow has turned into two machines running nonstop.
Yep.
but
Is
but
that the Magwell job?
no, that's one of the jobs. One of the jobs is a Magwell job, and the other one is the battleship job, battleship parts. So those are the only two active jobs that we really have right now. I have a lot of potential work that could come, but I haven't seen it, and I've only it's only been talked about at this point.
Yeah.
But we've taken this opportunity of slowing down to set up 4 shop visits this week,
Okay.
and
Cool.
so tomorrow I'm going to go see 2 shops. We were going to see one on Tuesday, but we moved the Tuesday shop to Thursday, or the other company did, and then we've got one on Wednesday.
So these are not people coming and visiting your shop. This is you
No,
going and touring someone else's shop
correct,
with
correct.
the intent for them to give you parts.
That is the ultimate goal. Some of it is so. One of the customers we've actually, or one of the people we've actually made parts for, and they said, "Hey, if you get some free time and you want to come see our shop, then you can do that." And so that one would be fun. It actually might be 5 shops. I need to reach out to someone. I just remembered. Might be 5 shops. Okay. And so we were going to go visit their shop. We have another one that we're bidding parts for, and it was funny. It was so funny. So these were some small aluminum parts that could turn into a production job,
Mm-hmm.
and we bid the job, and it was high for what the parts are, but you got to take into account these were complicated 5-axis aluminum parts, and so the setup, the programming, and there was going to be some special tooling, and so they were higher than what that customer had thought that it would take. Granted, they've already outsourced these parts to one shop, and that shop did such a horrible job that they had to scrap all of the parts. They couldn't
Oh
save them or
man.
rework them. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, they're obviously not simple parts if another shop's already scrapped them. But anyways, so we turned in the bid, and then a week goes by, and I follow up on them, and they're like, our internal quoting system said we could do them for like $2. And I was like, the material is $2. So, like,
well, yeah, everyone knows labor is free. Machine time is free. You're already paying for the employees.
And so that visit is going to be a combination of, we're going to sit down and talk with the purchasing agent and the engineer that designed the project, just to kind of go over that. Hey, the first time through, you got a lot more expense. You got a lot more spent on programming time, tooling, all this other stuff. And then what is the cost we could get it down to in a production setting?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's gonna be kind of a meeting, and then I'm hoping we can get a tour as well, because they have a manufacturing facility as well, and then maybe pick up some more parts from them as well. So that's one of the shops. So that's two of them. The third one is a company that is in the firearms industry, and they're a big player. They make a lot of ARs, and so we're just trying to get our foot in the door there. Honestly, just getting a shop tour, I would be happy with.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to try to see if there's any opportunity for us to take on any parts from them. But I'm not holding my breath, but just going in and seeing all the equipment they have, because they're going to have a massive facility that's just making a lot of AR stuff. It'd be really cool to see. And then the last company I know nothing about. Weston set it all up. I guess the shop is really close to his sister in Oklahoma, and he's driven by it a whole bunch, and so he just reached out to see if he could go get a shop tour. So I know nothing about what they make. I have no idea if there's going to be enough.
You're going on a blind date.
Yeah, I'm going on a blind date on that one. And then the shop that I forgot about that I need to reach out is, there's another company that's close to the gun shop, the gun company. And my Akuma sales rep has been trying to convince us to get an Akuma lathe over a Doosan lathe. And that's the company that has the Akuma lathe, and he wants to set up an opportunity for us to come go see that machine in person. So it's not really a shop tour, but I'm going to treat it. I'm going to treat it as such, to like go see that machine and then try to learn a little bit about whatever that company is, and whatever I can. It might just be as simple as coming in and looking at the machine and then leaving. But if there's an opportunity for me to see or learn anything else, I'm gonna try to use it.
Was this the guy that I met at the like IMTS Okuma shop dinner thingy we went to? I didn't mean to throw the word shop in there. The
No,
IMTS dinner.
That was Mazak.
Sales dinner.
That was
that Mazak?
That was Mazak.
They're all the same company in my head, and that's probably a differentiation I need to make.
But very similar to that guy. They both are very large individuals with very large hands. So when you shake their hands, it's like, I have baby hands.
And you are not a small person.
Yeah. So, I mean, they make, I mean, they're like, the Mazak rep, I think he was like 6'6". I mean, he looked like a football player, just massive. And then the Akuma sales rep, I think he actually was a football player. I think he was. And then when he retired, or when he got out of that, he got into manufacturing and became I want to say he was a football player. I think he was. I need to do some research, because I can almost swear that I heard that he used to play pro for a team way back. I'm going to need to do some digging, but he's a big guy as well. So if he wasn't pro, he was semi-pro or something. Like he was a big deal at one point in the football space. But yeah, that's kind of what I got lined up for the next week. And then I'm doing some rework on a part that I can't talk about because it's a new product for a company. Okay. But the part in question, it's going to be a high volume part when they're done with it. And they kind of jokingly asked me if I could make it. And I was like, I would love to, but it's a little bit outside of what our current capabilities are. The type of machine that would need it would be like a B-axis lathe, I think. I think that'd be the perfect machine for this part.
Was this the one that you considered bringing in an outside?
No, this is recent. This is like They
Okay.
called me. They called me on a Thursday, and they dropped off the parts on a Friday, this last Friday. So like, this is all very new as of last week. I've reworked one of the parts on Friday, and I'm working on the second one, and I've got 10 parts, and I can scrap a couple, but the company that made the parts, there was an error on the print, and they made it to the print rather than to the 3D model.
Oh,
And
I
so,
hate that when the print and the model don't match.
well, here's what it is. It was a hole that was dimensioned, and they had drug a dimension back from another location, and so it made the hole look like it was stepped, but it wasn't. It was just the dimension. It was the dimension lines for a different feature
Hmm.
that were overlaid on top of that hole that made it look like it stepped down to that dimension rather than that dimension going to a different feature.
Okay.
So, and so I'm using my 5-axis to align the top bore. So it's like a really deep hole. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm probing the top of the hole, and then I'm probing as far down as I can reach with my probe in the bottom, and then I'm aligning it in the A and C axes until they're perfectly concentric, and then I'm using a long reach end mill to try to open up that bottom portion of the hole
Are you doing that programmatically or by hand?
by hand. Like the
Oof.
program's running, but the alignment's by hand.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Huh.
So
That sounds tedious.
very, but it's a very expensive part, and that's the I don't know a programmatic way to do it, nor do I trust a programmatic way to do it on such a low volume rework.
Yeah. My only thought is if you have the manufacturing extension, which you obviously do since you're using 5-axis toolpaths, you could use the part alignment tool.
You could potentially, yeah. I've never used that,
Neither have
and so
I.
and so I didn't want to mess with it. So it's pretty easy to do. I probe the hole at the bottom, and I probe the hole at the top, and then I just look at I'd use two different work offsets, and I see how far off they are, and then I just adjust the A and the C until it's within a tenth vertically,
Yeah.
and that's worked pretty well. At least it did on the first one, and the second one I didn't quite finish it up on Friday, and so when I rehome out the machine, I'm gonna have to realign it, but
No.
and try to finish it out. But it took a while. I need to get a different tool, I think. Like I need almost like a little grinding wheel because it's got
Hmm.
the bore is a thou tolerance, and I'm opening it up, and it was already pre drilled out like 5 to 10 thou or 5 to 10 thou undersized at the very bottom, and I'm basically rubbing trying to
Yeah.
open it up with a long reach tool. And so I almost need like a little grinding wheel or a boring bar, like a boring head that I can run up and down it to open it up.
What's the material?
It's a hardened steel.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's very rubby.
Yeah. It's
So
yep. It sounds tough.
yeah, it sucks. I think I was lucky on the first one. And what's also frustrating is I'm also discovering that on some of these parts, the hole has the hole has ovaled a little, and it's out of spec. Like if I run my bore gauge that uses 3 points, it's in spec. But if I use a gauge pin, it gets tight in a couple spots. And so
Interesting.
on a couple of them, I'm having to actually redo the whole hole just to make sure that the gauge pin fits. So,
Huh.
anyways, it's a lot of work, but it's a customer that I really like and do not want to piss off. And if I can get them out of a bind, it just makes our relationship that much stronger.
Yep. It does sound like kind of a sucky job, but
It
hopefully
is a
they're paying
sucky
you well.
job. So, but I've got a process. It's just really slow. I think it took me 2 or 3 hours to get the first one reworked. just because of how rubby it was. But yeah.
I'm doing a shop tour at early next month,
Oh,
which gosh might be next week. So the class I'm teaching is in Bedford, Indiana, and to get to Bedford, Indiana, I have to drive through Bloomington, Indiana, home of Henry Holsters.
ooh,
So
Henry
I'm going to get to
Holsters.
do. I've already set it up with him. I'm going to get to do a shop tour, and I'll record that as a YouTube video. So
I
that'll be a
want to
lot of
see.
fun.
I want to see that Mazak running, or not Mazak.
The
His
brother.
no, he just got a new machine.
Oh, he got something big. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like a pallet pool.
yes, it's a machine I was looking at one point. It's not a MAM. There's the MAM 72. It's a step down. PC10 is like the last little bit of it. What is the first part of it? It's a Matsura MX 350
Sure.
PC10, something like that, or
Right.
MX 330 MX 330 PC10. I
So
think.
I'm looking forward to that a lot. I just finished up a. Actually, that's not true. I still have one more part that I'm knock out quickly tomorrow, but it's a part that I've done before. But I just finished up a non-Xometry job that had some parts that were simple looking, but work holding was a challenge. They are so imagine you have a cylinder with a
Mm-hmm.
hole through the middle, but cylinder, and then 45 degrees through the middle of that cylinder, there is a rectangle at 45 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a flange that's been rotated over at a fairly sharp angle.
Mm-hmm.
And the part was a little more than, well, it was a little bit less than 3/8 of an inch long. And the little cylinder was about 90 thou with a 0.8 millimeter hole going through it.
Oh, that sounds like Swiss work.
Potentially the flange, like trying to get that flange done. Yeah, you could do it on a Swiss. Trying to get that flange done was really tough because you had to hit it from both sides,
Mm-hmm.
and there was very, very little to hold on to for op 2.
Mm.
I actually recorded a video on this one since it wasn't Xometry work. I ended up using a 3D printed, we'll call it a fixture. It wasn't a soft jaw. I started trying to make 3D printed soft jaws, but I moved to making a 3D printed fixture that had a flexure for the holding force. So there was a hole in the side of it that I tapped quarter 20, and you basically stuck the part down into this little flexure and then clamped the flexure shut with the set screw. I was definitely worried that that wasn't going to work, but it did. So I had to go super conservative on speeds and feeds. I like did all of my roughing with a 1/16 inch end mill and like a teeny tiny step down and like a really slow feed. Otherwise, it would throw the part. But that was accurate enough to work. It helps that I was able to probe the pocket directly because I have
Yeah.
a teeny tiny little ball on the end of my probe. I think otherwise the accuracy of the 3D printed fixture would have been a challenge, but
Yeah.
I only needed 3 parts and I got 3 parts done. So
Speaking of Xometry, I actually accepted my first Xometry part in probably 9
really,
months. Mm-hmm.
wow.
Mm-hmm. So
Had they like docked your score or anything, your partner score, or
yeah,
was it
but
still up there?
it was still up there. The only thing they docked was engagement and communication, I think.
Those scores don't exist anymore,
Oh, well,
which actually may have helped you because that
yeah.
would have probably brought your score back up to 100%.
But I didn't actually. Me and Weston talked about it, and we're like, yeah, we should try to accept some Xometry parts just so we don't lose it.
Yep.
And it was an ITAR part, first ITAR part. So we're going to have to do a whole process for that. And Weston, like, submitted, like, 3 times the base score, and then they made it an exclusive offer.
Nice.
And so we ended up getting it. And it's a really simple part. Well, not really. It's an assembly of parts. There's a couple parts in it, and everything is like plus or minus 5 or 4 thou for the most part, with a couple tight bores for pens.
Mm-hmm.
But the hard part is going to be a lot of the geometric measurements that we're going to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
GD&T.
yep. So that's going to be the challenging stuff, and CMM is probably going to be our next purchase, because if we had a CMM, this job would be significantly more profitable than it's going to be, just because of how much time we're going to have to spend manually inspecting everything.
Yep.
So,
which has kind of always been one of the issues with Xometry, is like there's always a paperwork burden.
yeah.
I mean, I guess no matter who you ship parts to, you still have to inspect them. But
you
like when
inspect
Xometry starts to do their formal inspection, and
yeah, you kind of inspect at the level that the customer needs. And so, like, for some of my customers, like, my inspection processes are significantly better than what their other customers are doing. And so, well, I don't check all the measurements. I'll check, the critical ones to make sure they're good. And that's enough for these customers. Like, they don't have GD&T call outs or anything like that. And they don't, like, most of their dimensions are ±5. And while I don't check all my ±5 tolerances, I'll check everything that's like under 1,000. And as long as those are good, I've never had a complaint. So,
yeah, there's a lot of things where it's like, okay, this feature was cut with the same tool in the same setup as this other feature. There's nothing funky going on here. Like,
yeah,
maybe, we check it on the first one, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, like, especially when stuff's like dialed in really good, like as you get your wear and everything dialed in, like I ran a stainless steel part, and it was a cylinder, and I went to reprobe it in for op 2 for the flip, and the OD of it was 4 inches, and it was a 2 decimal tolerance, so ±15. And I probed it in, and the probe measured 3.9996. And so I got Weston over here. I called Weston over. I'm like, I'm gonna have to scrap this part off. I was off by 4 millionths. But I mean, it's just stuff like that just puts a smile on my face when you get it that close on the first try. And I wasn't even it wasn't a critical thing, but it's just like as you develop your processes, you are able to hit dimensions like that. It just builds up the confidence to know that as long as everything's set up right and you're following procedures that you've kind of developed through trial and error, you'll get reliable parts out on the other end.
Yep.
So, anyways, that's about all I got right now. I believe as of right now, almost. Well, okay. I've sent out a bid, and if that bid comes in, then we will have hit our goal for the year in terms of
it's May, right?
yeah. Yeah, I want to go back and look. It's not even May, it's April still.
Well, by the time this comes out, it'll be May.
Oh, that's true.
Wait, so you've hit your revenue goal for May, or your revenue goal for the year?
For the year. Not we haven't turned that work in yet, but like we have enough long-term contracts and stuff on the books that we're going to have to get done by the end of the year, that like I know I'm going to hit my revenue goal right now with all the active jobs that we have, which is basically that with the battleship parts and the magwells are 2 longer term jobs that are stretched out over a longer period. So with just those 2 jobs plus all the work we've already done, I'm going to hit my goal. And that still leaves, we're about to enter into month 5. It still leaves the rest of the year, to get more work in.
So for the rest of your year, how much of your time is booked with these longer term contracts?
One machine is basically, the UMC is basically booked all year.
Okay.
Because we were doing 8,500 pieces, and they added on another 4,500 on top.
So you have 4 machines, call it your 25% booked.
Yeah, 25% booked. Maybe just a little bit over. The battleship parts, they had us quote an additional 70% more of what we're currently doing. So
people are still building battleships.
I guess. I don't know.
I thought everything was just going to be drones now.
They're hinges for doors for bulkheads.
That's true.
And
There's probably a lot of those in a battleship.
yeah. And so it's a standard part that they use, and depending on the year they go through so many, and like whenever they do retrofits or refurbs, I think they use them as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think those like warships get refurbished or not is retrofit
Retrofitted,
refitted. I feel like there's a specific boat term for it.
Upgraded
fairly often.
Yeah, reconditioned.
I wonder how many battleships the U.S. has right now.
I don't know, but so I don't know if these are going on new ships or old ships. My guess is it's probably more old ships than new ships, because it's like a restock thing. Depending on the year, they have more or less that they have to redo. So, but regardless, it's consistent work, and that's what I like. The more jobs I get that are like this, they kind of take the stress and pressure off keeping the shop going, because it's like, okay, I know what that machine's doing for like the rest of the year, more or less, and so then and that job covers that machine's payment plus extra, to help out with some of the other machines. Yeah. So the problem with all of that is, and in the first half of the year, is all of that stuff sounds great in theory, but the first half of the year we've been spending so much money trying to get these processes up and running that it's felt like the margins are a lot thinner than they actually are. And that's just because of how much money we've had to spend on the front end to get these jobs up and running. And so, like, over the long haul, they're going to be extremely profitable. In the very beginning, it actually made things more stressful. And that's something that you hear about, but until you actually go through it, it's like, I'm going to go broke from success.
Yeah. You might say growth eats cash for breakfast.
And so it's like we're not necessarily doing anything wrong. But that cash flow is brutal in the beginning.
Yep.
So, tooling up a new machine and building fixtures and all the other crap we've been having to do around the shop just to make things more reliable. It adds up. But the good news is that I think we're done spending for a hot minute, and so hopefully we can recover. And then going forward, I want to try to only spend money that we actually have. If you can do that,
always nice.
but we're doing better. It got really stressful there for a little bit, like a little tight. But I don't think you can grow a business without having times like that. And my grandfather, who started a business, he always comes to the shop, and I like to ask him questions about his career and his business over time. And he always used to joke that he got really nervous when his bank accounts got big because it meant that they weren't growing and they weren't buying things. And so it was kind of an inverse of what you'd think. He's like, if we started seeing too much money in our accounts, we're like, oh, we're doing something wrong. We're not spending the money and growing the business. So kind of a different perspective.
Yep.
So any let's see here. You came and you saw our shop. Have you had any thoughts about that tour looking back, or anything that you've has it affected you in any way on your own shop?
So it definitely made me think that I am not doing enough in my shop to stay organized and stay neat. I don't think this was in the video. I think this was after we finished up the video where I was like, your shop is a lot nicer than mine and I have a lot of work to do. And we were like, I was like walking around trying to find things wrong with your shop and seriously struggling at it.
Mm-hmm.
The level that you are dialed in compared to mine is a little shameful on my part. This is why I haven't released a shop tour yet. I'm always like, oh, I'll do it after this organizational project. I'll do it after that organizational project.
Yeah. But to be fair, you got two things going against you. compared to our situation. One, your shop is right next to your home. And
Mm-hmm.
so you start treating your shop like it's an extension of your home. And what that means is I don't care. I live in it. And, if things get messy, I'll clean it at some point. And, we've all had weeks where, the dishes didn't get done as soon as they needed to get done, or laundry piles up because we're super busy with other stuff. And I think that mentality when your shop's that close to your house, at least that's how it was in our old shop, because it was right next to my grandparents' house, and it felt more like a house garage setting, and so we didn't keep it as clean as we do this new shop. When you separate it out and you have to drive to work, and then you have to drive home, that creates like a physical barrier that kind of separates your mindset from home and work, and makes it a little easier to focus on just the work side. And so you do a little bit better job of keeping things cleaned and organized, versus it being like right next to your house, and uh, you start having like this working from home almost mentality, which it doesn't you don't clean in as much as you would normally. And then the second thing is I'm a 2-man shop, not a 1-man shop, and the other man is a lot more organized than I am.
Yeah, the that's part of it. I think another part of it is like I go and eat lunch in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and like if I have an hour where the machine's running or whatever, I'll just go inside and hang out with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I'm not like spending. It's not like I walk in and spend an 8-hour day here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I escape it rather easily, so the messes probably don't bother me as much as they would if I did have to drive 20 minutes, stay here 8 hours, and then leave.
Yeah.
That's probably part of it. The other thing that I have to deal with is, because it is so close to my house, my kids and wife also come in here. And
Yep.
like, there's a sock on my desk. This is
Mm-hmm.
not my sock. I did not put this here. I don't know why there's only one of them,
Mm-hmm.
but like, that was not a mess that I made. The originally, and I've gotten rid of this for the most part now, like when we first moved in, all of my like household tools were in here.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a little bit of this, but I was able to get most of them out. But it was like, painting supplies and boxes of like electrical like outlets and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
paint cans, and all of that stuff got put in here, which
Mm-hmm.
at the time made sense. Workshop tools go in workshop, but that's stuff that you don't need or want in the way in a machine shop.
Mm-hmm.
My wife tends to put gardening stuff in here because like the garden is literally right out the back door.
Mm-hmm.
The doors to the shop can be a little bit finicky at times, and the girls will go in and out, and the doors won't latch. Then they'll get blown open, and then leaves will blow in. And these are like all things I wouldn't have to deal with at a shop that was farther away.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
obviously trade-offs where there's big advantages. For example, the other day I flooded my shop, and one, I would not have noticed had I just gone home. And two, I was able to call my wife at 9 o'clock and be like, please come help me mop.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I don't know what it's like to flood the shop and leave and come back a couple days later to see several inches of water in it. What's that like?
Yeah. I had a couple of floods in the last couple days.
Ah.
Um, I coming back from my trip, I had a super hard time focusing. And I feel like the last day or two, I've kind of gotten that worked out. But before the trip, it like I was working on this big Xometry job and teaching, and it was like go, 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 go. And there was no gaps, there was no breaks. And it was like a lot of that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the trip was also, I would say, a little bit more laid back, but it was like every night we had a place to be. Like every day there was a thing to do, and it was just like thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And then I got home, and I had this like 2-week period where it's like, was it 2 weeks or 1 week? I don't know. I had an extended period where it was like, okay, I've got things to do. I've got important things to do, but there's not a super critical deadline to anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no outside factors that are forcing my schedule. Like I went from like superstress and superstructure to all of a sudden there being nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain, and plus I was tired from the, several weeks of stress and work. And I got back and my brain was like, I don't know how to job shop anymore. And it just, like, this job that I've been working on, it took me like 3 days. It should have been 4 hours. I probably actually got about 4 hours of work done on it. But it took me 3 days to get those 4 hours of work done because I was just having such a hard time focusing. And it turns out when you're not focusing very well, it is very easy to flood your shop.
Yes. Yes.
So at one point, this was the bad flood where I started filling a bucket and then I got a phone call. And then while I was on that phone call, I got another phone call that was from my wife to go eat dinner. So I walked away from the bucket for a second to answer the phone call. And then I got another phone call that was like, hey, it's dinner time. So then I went and ate dinner. I hung out with the kids for a bit. I played games with them. And I think I just came back out to like turn off the air conditioning or something, or the heat. And there was like 2 inches of water everywhere in my shop.
Yep.
So, oops.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I did, which was annoying at the time, but much less messy, I was filling up the coolant tank on the office mill. And I had miscounted the number of buckets that I put in. And I put in one too many buckets of coolant. And that very evenly spread itself across my entire floor. So.
Yep. Yeah, you'll get kind of after you flood a shop, you'll get shop flood PTSD, and thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't had any other issues since then. The only issues we've had have been like machine leakage, not necessarily a filling problem. So
yeah, on the Tormach, if you don't push chips out of the way, it'll like build up a little mountain, and then you'll get like a waterfall kind of off the side, and that'll leak on the floor. And I did that once as well. Yeah, but for the most part, I got good at staying on top of that during the big production job.
Is the big production job done?
So I'm on my last batch now. I have like, I don't know, over a month to work on them. And I'm like 20% of the way through them.
Okay.
So I do need to order some more material here on Monday. But
is that going to be a problem with you being busy for the next 3 weeks of the month?
Maybe. But remember, teaching is only 4 days a week. So I still have, actually it's 3.5 days really, because it's Monday evening, all of Tuesday, all of Wednesday, all of Thursday.
Okay.
So I'll still have Monday mornings, Fridays, Saturdays at a minimum.
What about is your wife still helping you load some of those?
The goal is no.
Oh, okay.
She can if she needs to. But I think if I just run the machine fairly passively when I'm home, like I think I got it down to like a 12-minute cycle to get 1.5 parts, something like that. And because I'm going back to being close to home, I can come in, start a part, go back out to the house, finish a TV show with the kids, come back out, run a 12-minute part.
That is the nice thing.
12 minutes is not bad.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about being that close, is that it's easier to keep parts running longer throughout the day. Did you ever add anything to make it easier to not mess up the flip?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was given a couple good ideas. You had some good ideas. What's his name? Dylan at Prodium had some ideas. A couple people in the comments. I think the easiest thing to do would just be to put some sort of work stop on the vise, probably like a 3D printed one that bolts on there somehow. But honestly, at this point, I don't know. I've run like 1,800 of them. 1,400 of them. I think I'm just going to go with it.
Fair enough. Got a process that's working. It might not be perfect, but don't want to change it at this stage.
Yeah, there's not much point to it this time. Yeah, I could do a pallet too, and get longer run times, but again, why bother at this point?
Yep. I understand all that. Trying to think.
Well, speaking of Xometry, some people probably saw the title of my members only video.
Oh yeah.
So I think I'm done with Xometry work.
You think you're done with Xometry work?
I think I'm done. I'm gonna leave my foot in the door. I'm not gonna burn any bridges yet, but I my goal is not to take any more Xometry work. I've got that big job to finish up, and then I took one kind of quick, easy job, some one-op parts from polycarbonate, and I think I'll be done. With teaching, basically my next like 3 months are covered income wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use that time to transition all to my own customers. And I have a little bit of a new business venture or a modification to my current business venture, which I think we'll talk about next time because we are 52 minutes in.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that next time.
Fair enough.
But
little teaser
yeah,
for
I
next
think
time.
it's time to make that transition. So with and the reason for this is the catalyst. Looking back at the last 4 months or so, with the exception of January, my profit from Xometry were just outrageous. I made like 95% profits with Xometry and did relatively little work. But that was basically, I just had like the perfect job roll through. After that, Xometry was the majority of what I spent my time on and the minority of my profits. So
is that because of this big job where
that
you're
is a
getting
lot
paid?
of it, to be fair.
Okay. So it's not
But even
Xometry itself, it's taking that big production work. It's basically the problem that I have. Taking on big jobs that pay a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but in the short term, they're actually more expensive in the short term.
But I did other jobs too.
Yeah.
I've done, I don't know, 40 jobs with Xometry or something this year, with that one being the biggest. But even with the really good job I had in January, like this year, I have spent like a just hugely disproportionate amount of time on Xometry compared to where it is in my income. And I think that's just kind of a natural fact of the shop maturing. Like I'm actually getting non-Xometry parts. And then also with like doing trainings for other people and teaching. So
yeah, that's kind of what happened to us. I won't say outgrew Xometry, but getting our own customers and developing those relationships gave us consistent work that we didn't have to hunt for. And while the profit margins weren't as high as Xometry, also the requirements on our time was a lot less. So we could kick out a lot more parts in the same amount of time. Kind of going back to that whole Xometry paperwork cost and inspection cost eats up a lot of time. And, doing what our customers need to be successful was a lot less than what it takes to do for Xometry, which may or may not be needed by the customer, but is needed by Xometry.
yes.
And so that's the frustrating thing about Xometry, and one of the reasons I don't do a whole lot with them is stuff that is not a big deal to the customer is a big deal to Xometry because they have to make everything a big deal because it's out of their hands and into everyone else's. So it just makes it a bigger time investment. It also makes it more a higher profit margin, to be fair, but my time is better spent in other areas and I can make more money making more parts with my own customers, especially as I build up those relationships and then get repeat parts, like especially now with Pro Shop kind of starting to come online and actually starting to pay dividends in our speed. Like last week I had like 12 parts, 12 one type parts that I needed to get done in a week, and I was really nervous. Like normally they were parts that I would do for my customer that like they were all new parts that I was going to have to program, and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get them all done. They were due on Friday, and I had everything done by Wednesday, and we dropped them off on Thursday, so a day early. And it was just we're getting a lot more efficient at what we're doing, and it took me doing those 12 parts to realize how much more efficient we were getting at doing stuff for them and at meeting our customers' needs. And so that was honestly a really good feeling. So
Well, speaking of good feelings, we have Patreon members.
Woohoo!
Those Patreon members are in a list here somewhere. Aha.
Do we have any questions?
Oh, we do have one question. This is relevant. This is from Norman Footpedal Jones. He has a question for each of us. For AJ, you've mentioned that you are attempting to move away from Xometry as your primary customer. What are your steps, or what steps are you taking to find new customers for the type of work that you want? Well, I mean, I'm pretty much done with Xometry now. One thing is, YouTube videos and podcasts. Like, I just sometimes parts come and find me. I am starting to build up lists of places that I am just going to cold call and cold email, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to start actually asking for work in my YouTube videos now, and I think do videos a little bit more often. I don't know, normal job shop thingies. I'm going to do those. All right, so same guy for Harrison. Since Xometry was never your primary customer, how closely do AJ steps match what you have done to find new customers and the type of work that you want?
So, Xometry was my primary supplier for the first year. So, the first year, Xometry was my primary source of income. But I never wanted it to be my primary. Did you ever want Xometry to be your primary? Were you okay with Xometry being your primary?
Sure. Being the majority by itself, though, I always knew was dangerous.
Okay.
So maybe it would be the biggest customer that I would have, but I never planned on it being exclusively the only thing.
Okay. So I'll talk about my experiences, and then you can kind of chime in on how different they are from yours, because I don't know everything that you're doing to find customers. So in the beginning, we use Xometry as a platform to grow our experience, because what sometimes gets lost is me and Weston knew nothing about machining. Like, it's probably a miracle we passed the Xometry test. And it was just so early on that we were able to do it with so little experience and literally nothing. And we passed it first try. And that was probably just a miracle in itself. And Xometry taught us how to be a machinist over time. And it gave us the opportunity. We made nothing our first year. I think me and Weston each took home right around $4,000 a pop for the whole year from the business. It basically lived off savings. And so, but it gave us a lot of good practices. And for finding more work, we were shotgunning and trying to find as many places around us as we could. We were always reaching out. I drove around and handed out cards a handful of times, actually going knocking on doors, talking to everyone we know in the industry, trying to use every connection that we had access to. Eventually, that led to one of the people that we went to school with at JBU in the engineering department was working at a company, and they got us an interview with the procurement guy, and then he got us in, and then he put it in his 2 weeks and left, and and then we made that connection, and they started giving us work, and they became our primary customer for the next year and a half to two. And they were our biggest source of income after that. During that time, we started tapering off on Xometry, but we were always doing it in the background. And then we had a whole bunch of smaller customers that like looking back, we did a lot of the gun stuff. And that got us a lot of customers. We did, barrel threading, RMRs, Cerakoting. Through that connection, we ended up getting small production job, our first production job. And it was not really a machining job. It was more of a manufacturing job. And so we bought a bunch of sheet metal parts. We machined some dies to form them. We hired a welder to weld them together. There was a little bit of machining on some of the components, but for us, it was a really good paying job. It was we made a replica of a part for a gun. It was a muzzle device that went on the end, and it was used in the Rhodesian Bush War. Is when it was developed, and we made a replica of it. I think the original sold for anywhere from 500 to 1,000, and we laser marked these replicas, not for use on a gun, and gave them a serial number, and for our customer that gave us that. And so it was a bunch of smaller connections that we had, and we never really got into any other big shops, but we had enough small local customers that kind of matched what we were doing for Xometry in the area. And we basically just kept using as many connections or all the connections that we could get to try to find work. And since then, we've started getting bigger and bigger customers. We've started developing a reputation. We're starting to specialize, and we're starting to cut out the crap or the stuff that's like, it's not really crap. It's just
you're pumpkin planning.
Yeah, we're pumpkin planning. We're focusing on what's more important for the business and trying to get rid of stuff that like guy comes in and he's got a tractor and there's a part on his tractor that is worn out, and he wants us to see if we can get a guy to weld it to fill this area up and then machine it back. And or hey, I got a lawnmower and this plastic piece on the lawnmower broke. I can't find it. Can you 3D print me a new one, or can you machine me a new one? Or and we got a lot of that in the beginning. They were fun challenges. Honestly, I had a lot of fun doing that type of work. Like I remember at one point this lady had a set of French doors, and some of the hardware inside those doors broke. And so she had one good part and one bad part, and I remade it, and it needed to be done on a 4th axis, and I didn't have one. And so I machined a block as my carrier stock, and then I stuck it out of the vise, and then I rotated it in my vise like a 4th axis and indicated it in. And when it was done, she thought that the part I machined was the factory part, and the part that was the factory part had something wrong with it, and she asked me to rework it. And I was like, no, that's the one that came in it. And she's like, oh, well, your part does better than that one. So I was pretty happy about that. But I mean, we just had a lot of little stuff like that like wasn't that high volume, but built our reputation. And you never know what connections you'll get by doing work for random people, because some of them might work at a big company or know someone who does. And then if they can, like, I have found that the most reliable way to get work is what we're doing right now, which is getting shop tours and getting our foot in the door. If we can go meet the people that are actually doing the purchasing, that more than anything else has led to actual work. Emails, phone calls, if you know who you're going to, okay, but blind calling, I had almost zero. I don't know if I've had any luck with like blind shooting stuff out into the ether, trying to get connections.
Interesting.
So
anyway, so Patreon plug.
Hopefully that answers. How different is that to your journey? Because I kind of went on a little rant there for a minute.
For me?
Yeah, because the question was, how's that different than you?
Oh, well, there's current plan and future plan. Current method and future method. Current method is just to kind of be accessible and to have people know me, and like work comes in that way.
Okay.
So, it's basically all word of mouth essentially. But future plan is to push a little bit more aggressively. Patreon plug. So we have Patreon members. They help support the podcast, and particularly they support producer Jacob, who has been critical in making all of this stuff happening lately. For example, tonight he reminded me about it, which is good because I forgot to tell Harrison. He also has been handling all of the editing, and like when we had that guest last time, he arranged that. He's been handling the posts and facilitating the early access that all of our Patreons get as a perk of being our Patreon member. He has been facilitating the weekly Q&A, which you get even if you join the Patreon as a free member, which is a thing. You don't have to pay to be a part of the Q&A. You just have to come sign up for free at the Patreon. And he is also around the Discord all the time. And the Discord has been fantastic. So it's not only how like Harrison and I coordinate these episodes. Well, okay, it's how Jacob coordinates the episodes with us. But there's like a genuine, like thriving community there. I, in fact, had to mute the Discord notifications on my phone because I used to get all of the Discord notifications for that group. But at this point, it's just always active. And so there's too many notifications. So those are turned off now. So if you want to become a part of that community, you can come join us by signing up for the Patreon. Any paid tier gets access to the Discord and early access. If you pay $10 a month or more, then we get to read your name on the podcast. Those names include Ben at Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S, Shep A, Jacob at Zonim Precision, aka Producer Jacob, Jason S, Joshua H, Christian Z, Dylan at Got Chips, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z 2Z Systems, Trey V, Guy L, Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie P, Chris Zyke with Zyke Precision. It doesn't say it on my notes, but I think it's Zyke Precision. EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and as ever, Jake Brownson. Now, I would like to give a formal apology to Trey V and Guy L. We forgot to include you on the list because you guys pay more. So you're at the higher tier, and we forgot to include the higher tier in our summary.
Oops.
So thank you, Trey V and Guy L. I apologize for missing you for a couple weeks. That was my fault. And we will now and forever say your name. Also, there is a Taps of Patience website that is tapsofpatience.com. Tapsofpatience.com includes things like the big thing is it has a transcript of all the episodes and a summary of each episode that is searchable. So if you want to remember that one time Harrison said that one thing, you can do a search for it and find it that way instead of having to listen to, 115 hours of yip yap.
Fair enough.
Is that all my plugs? I think that's all my plugs.
Yeah.
Did I get everything?
I think we did.
Wow.
Awkward success.
Yeah, should this just be our goodbye? I don't know what to do when we get everything right.
Oh man. Yeah, I think that's about all we got. So I guess I can do the outro. There it goes. I don't know how to do the outro without music blaring in my ears now.
I can turn it up.
No, I'm good. All right,
guys. You did yell at me when we first got on, so.
Well, to be fair, you were not responding. I couldn't tell if you could hear me. So, anyways, guys, this has been Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro. And thanks for hanging out with us and listening to our journeys. And hopefully we provided some useful information somewhere in our talk. And we'll catch you guys later.
Taps and patience, our daily grind. In this machine shop, we'll always find joyous struggles, all intertwined. Taps and patience, one of a kind.